These are 3 retirement accounts that millions of Americans are betting their golden years on, and according to the data, 2 of them are quietly losing that bet. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one actually funds retirement better, why the system you grew up trusting basically disappeared, and what the guy who invented the 401k himself now calls his own creation. Let's get into it. Here is the part nobody really talks about. Back in 1980, more than 80% of private sector workers had access to a real defined benefit pension plan, the kind where you put in your years, you retire, and a guaranteed check shows up every single month for the rest of your life. By 2025, only about 14% of private sector workers still have access to that kind of plan, while 70% are now stuck with defined contribution plans, meaning your 401k, your 403b, or your 457b. The Federal Reserve's own survey of consumer finances shows the share of workers under defined benefit plans collapsed from 59% in 1989 down to 21% by 2022. If you are between 45 and 65 right now and you feel like the rules changed somewhere in the middle of your career, you're not imagining it, because the rules literally changed underneath you. To understand why, you have to understand where this whole system came from, because none of it was always like this. American Express launched the first private pension in American industry in 1875, and for nearly 100 years, pensions were basically the deal, where you put in the time, the company funded the plan, and the company carried all the risk. Everything started to crack in 1963, when the Studebaker Packard plant in South Bend, Indiana shut down with a pension plan so underfunded that thousands of workers walked away with little to nothing. That collapse became the spark, and on Labor Day, the 2nd of September 1974, President Gerald Ford signed IRAs, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, into law. IRAs set minimum standards for pension plans, created the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation to insure them, and almost as a side note, it created the Individual Retirement Account, the IRA. Then came the accident. In 1978, Congress passed the Revenue Act, which added a small, boring little provision to the tax code called Section 401k, and it wasn't designed to replace pensions at all. The provision was supposed to be a supplement, basically a tax tweak for executive compensation. Everything shifted in 1980 when a benefits consultant named Ted Benna, working at the Johnson Companies in Pennsylvania, looked at Section 401k and realized you could use it to let employees defer salary into a tax-advantaged retirement account. Benna built the first 401k plan. The industry exploded, and 17 years later, the Taxpayer Relief Act of 1997, sponsored by Senator William Roth of Delaware, gave us the Roth IRA, which uses the same structure as a traditional IRA, except you pay taxes now and pull the money out tax-free later. That is the full lineup. Pension, 401k, and IRA. 3 tools with 3 completely different deals. Here is where it gets uncomfortable. A pension, what is called a defined benefit plan, promises you a specific monthly payout based on your salary, your age, and your years of service. And the employer funds it, manages it, and absorbs the investment risk. A 401k or an IRA flips that entire equation. Because you contribute, you pick the investments, and you eat the risk. If the market tanks the year you retire, that is your problem now. The National Institute on Retirement Security actually ran the numbers on this back in January 2022 in a study called A Better Bang for the Buck 3.0. Their finding was blunt. A typical pension delivers retirement benefits at a 49% cost advantage compared to a typical individually directed 401k. To hit the same target of replacing 54% of your final salary in retirement, a pension plan only needs contributions equal to 16.5% of payroll, while a 401k needs 32.3%, which is almost double. Roughly 4/5 of that cost difference happens after you retire. Because individual retirees pay higher fees, lose access to longevity risk pooling, and tend to shift into lower return investments out of fear. Translation: dollar for dollar, the pension is just a more efficient machine. The man who designed the 401k basically said the same thing, because Ted Benna told Smart Money magazine back in 2011 that his creation had turned into a monster. Benna later told the Christian Science Monitor in 2017 that the 401k was never meant to serve as the main way Americans saved for retirement, since it was supposed to be the cherry on top, and instead it became the entire sundae. Why did employers walk away from pensions? 2 reasons. 401ks are much cheaper and simpler for companies to run, with fixed contributions, predictable expenses, and no liability if people happen to live longer than expected. Regulations also made defined benefit plans more expensive to administer, while making defined contribution plans more tax-friendly, which meant the risk got quietly transferred off the company's balance sheet and onto yours. Before we crown the pension as the winner, let's be honest about the other side. Pensions tie you to one employer, so if you change jobs 5 times during your career, which most people do now, that loyalty model hurts you. Public pensions in particular are sitting on enormous unfunded liabilities, with Illinois alone facing roughly $139 billion in unfunded pension debt, and Kentucky's public systems crossed $36 billion in unfunded liabilities back in 2015. 5 states, Illinois, Kentucky, New Jersey, Mississippi, and Connecticut, are all funded at less than 60% of what they promised, which means a guaranteed pension is only as guaranteed as the plan standing behind it. The PBGC steps in for private plans when they fail, but even their maximum guarantee has a ceiling. For 2026, the PBGC maximum monthly guarantee tops out at around $23,680 a year at age 75 under the straight life annuity option, which beats nothing but probably isn't the retirement you pictured. What about the 401k and the IRA? Are they actually working out for people? Let's look at the receipts. According to Fidelity SQ4 2025 retirement analysis, the average 401k balance sits at $146,400, while the average IRA holds $137,095, which sounds decent until you break it down by age. Baby boomers are carrying an average 401k of $249,300 and an average IRA of $257,002. So adding those together puts you at roughly $500,000. The problem is figuring out how long $500,000 actually lasts when Social Security only replaces about 40% of your pre-retirement income. And most financial planners say you need around 70% replacement to live comfortably. That gap is exactly what your 401k and IRA are supposed to fill. For a lot of Americans, the gap isn't getting filled. An AARP survey from April of 2024 found that 20% of adults age 50 and older have zero retirement savings, and 61% are openly worried they won't have enough money to last. The U.S. Census Bureau found that roughly 50% of women between 55 and 66 have no personal retirement savings at all, and 42% of full-time working Americans don't even have access to a workplace retirement plan in the first place. Here is where this all lands. If you have a pension, protect it, because the math on pensions is genuinely better since they deliver the same retirement income at roughly half the cost of a 401k. They handle longevity risk for you, and they remove the single hardest part of retirement, which is figuring out how to spend down your savings without running out. That is exactly why the United Auto Workers in 2023 and the Boeing machinists in 2024 went on strike trying to get pensions restored after Boeing froze its plan back in 2014. If you don't have a pension, and most of you watching this don't, then your 401k and your EAAREI are the whole game. For 2026, you can put up to $24,500 into a 401k with an extra $8,000 catch up if you are 50 or older, and the IRA limit climbs to $7,500 with an $8,600 limit if you are 50 plus. Take the full employer match if one's offered, because in Ted Benna's own words, that is free money. Keep a close eye on your expense ratios too, since the Department of Labor has shown that paying just 1% more in fees can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over a career. Remember that the Secure Act and Secure 2.0 pushed your required minimum distribution age up to 73, heading to 75 by 2033, which gives your money more time to grow before the IRS forces you to start pulling it out. Which one funds retirement better? Honestly, the math is clear. Pensions win on pure efficiency, with guaranteed income, lower cost, professional management, and no risk on you. 401ks and IRAs win on flexibility, portability, and control. The truth most people miss is that the system we have now didn't choose you. It chose employers because the risk got handed to the worker, the guarantee got handed back to the company, and a tax provision originally designed as a side dish became the main course for an entire generation of retirees. Ted Benna called it a monster, and the data backs him up. If you are 45 to 65 right now, the most important thing you can do is stop assuming the 401k will do for you what a pension would have done for your parents, because mathematically it won't, not at the same cost, and not without you doing the work. Know what you have, maximize what you can, and don't let the system that quietly switched on you catch you off guard in retirement.